From the Dagestani's deadly striking ability to his ability to destroy top fighters like Dan Hooker, this is why fighters should be terrified of Islam Makhachev. You might be surprised the man's striking ability is the first thing I'm talking about, considering how he's known for his wrestling. But let me tell you, lightweight division fighters are just as scared of this guy's fists as they are of his ground game. Islam's striking game is like something else. First off, his precision is at another level, and he's got this uncanny ability to land clean shots right on target. I'm not saying this, guys. Look at his fight with Drew Dober. Makhachev's striking was crisp and accurate. He was practically picking Dober apart. His punches were like laser beams finding their mark. Even an elite fighter like Drew Dober completely fell apart in front of him. But it's not just accuracy. Makhachev's striking is also extremely powerful. When he connects, it's like a sledgehammer's hitting you. I mean, look at what he did to Thiago Moises. The guy dropped like a sack of potatoes. Honestly, any fighter that isn't thinking about how dangerous the lightweight king's hands are is crazy. Remember when the Dagestani shot down Arman Tsarukyan? The heat that this man's packing in those fists is enough to even put absolute beasts like Tsarukyan on their back foot. His striking isn't the only thing that should have his opponents trembling. This man's also got that patented Dagestani trademark gas tank on him. His cardio's off the charts, and guys, let me tell you, that terrifies his opponents. Imagine facing off against this guy and having to go the distance, constantly thinking about how he's never gonna slow down. Just look at his fight against Davi Ramos. Makhachev was pushing the pace from start to finish. He was like the Energizer Bunny in there. And very unsurprisingly, even a seasoned vet like Ramos couldn't keep up with him. The lightweight king was all over the place, throwing strikes, going for takedowns, and just keeping the pressure on the entire time. Ramos was huffing and puffing, while Makhachev was still fresh as a daisy. Again, it's not just one fight, guys. Makhachev has consistently brought his insane cardio into the octagon. Look back at that Moises fight that I already talked about. It wasn't just his striking that brought that beast down. No, Islam was relentless. And he didn't give Moises a single chance to breathe. Yep, he made sure to push the pace all the way till the very end, and the dangers of that gas tank were clear as day, guys. Islam's engine was still warm, whereas Moises was completely gassed out. Now, you might be thinking that a lot of fighters have good cardio and striking, so why is it so scary when it comes to Islam? Well, he's got a pretty solid fight IQ tying it all together for maximum effectiveness. And this definitely isn't talked about enough. But trust me when I tell you, this guy's got the right mind for the game. He knows what moves to make and when to make them. Makhachev reads his opponents like a book, and in Joe Rogan's words, he plays chess in that octagon. Let's go back to the fight with Arman Tsarukyan, guys. Makhachev was constantly analyzing Tsarukyan's movements, finding openings, and exploiting them. He knew exactly when to strike and when to go for a takedown. It was like he could predict Tsarukyan's every move. And let's not forget about how he absolutely toyed with Drew Dober. He put his fight IQ on full display and quickly realized that Dober couldn't handle his grappling game. So guess what? He took the fight to the ground, where he then went on to dominate. It was a calculated move, and it paid off big time, even in that fight against Moises. Sure, Islam's cardio and striking were levels above his opponent, but he was able to win because he was always 2 steps ahead. The Dagestani dismantled Thiago with his superior fight IQ, and made smart decisions throughout the fight. Now that I've gone over these very often ignored aspects of Islam's game, let's get to the one thing that fighters should be terrified of above all else when it comes to this man. I'm talking about the otherworldly Dagestani wrestler and Sambo. If Khabib was the GOAT, then Islam is his second coming, because he's just as good, if not better than, the Eagle. Makhachev's wrestling game, because, man, it's a thing of beauty. Any fighter with a brain should be straight up terrified of what he can do on the mat. First off, Makhachev's takedowns are flawless. Don't believe me? Ask Drew Dober. The lightweight king took him down like he was flicking a bug off his shoulder. And no disrespect to Drew, but those takedowns were smooth and effortless. Dober had no answer for Makhachev's wrestling, and once he hit the ground, it was game over. But it's not just about the takedowns, guys. Those are just the first step. Yep, the Dagestani's control on the mat is also insane. When he gets you down, good luck getting back up. Thiago Moises found that out the hard way, and he was smothered to the ground. The guy was dominated in every grappling exchange. Islam is literally like a boa constrictor on the mat, guys. Control is just one aspect of his wrestling, though. And there's a few more things he does on the mat that make him a monster. Yep, his ground and pound, weight replacement, and finishing are all top-notch. Come on, there was no way I wasn't gonna talk about his ground and pound. When he's on top, he's like a human jackhammer. He rains down strikes with pinpoint accuracy and devastating power. And that Davi Ramos was a great example of this. Makhachev unleashed a ground and pound assault that left Ramos absolutely battered and bruised. Weight placement is just a very central aspect of any good wrestler's game. But the guys that have fought Islam and Khabib all go on and on about it, and how they simply couldn't escape the weight that was crushing down on them. Yeah, it's not by mistake that Islam constantly takes opponents down to the mat and drowns them there. Still, despite all of these skills, his wrestling would be pretty useless if he didn't have amazing finishing skills. I mean, do I even have to elaborate on this? The guy finished Hooker, Dober, and even the great Charles Oliveira. Any fighter that ends up on the ground with Islam, which is pretty much what happens to everyone he steps in there with, constantly has to be afraid of being submitted. Plus, everyone in that division remembers Khabib's dominance, and considering that this is his student, teammate, and friend, you best believe his wrestling's gonna be on a different level. Even the most stubborn fighters can't deny this man's skills. I mean, his record speaks for itself. He's won against some true monsters. Of course, I'm talking about his insane win streak at lightweight. But it's not just no-name fighters that he's beaten, guys. He's taken on the best of the best, and even defeated guys that everyone thought were gonna beat him. I mean, just look at that fight versus Volkanovski. Sure, it was a close one, but it was against the pound-for-pound #1 guy in the world. And everyone thought things were looking bad for Islam when the fight started. But the guy pulled it back and edged out an insanely important win. Alex isn't the only beast that Islam's beaten. Nope, Charles Oliveira was crushed into the dirt by this man. Oliveira was so great that people were talking about how he was even better than Khabib. No one expected how their fight went, guys. It was total domination from start to finish. And when I say start to finish, I really only mean like a few minutes, because Charles got crushed in the second round. Yeah, if that's how badly the second best lightweight of all time did against Islam, you can probably understand why everyone should be very afraid of this guy. Still, despite the dominance against Do Bronx, Islam's most impressive fight was actually against another lightweight beast. Yep, I'm talking about how he devastated Dan Hooker. The Hangman's no joke. And while he may not be one of the big dogs of the division, he's an absolute madman. The guy doesn't quit, and he was supposed to give Islam his biggest challenge ever when he stepped into the octagon with the man. But guess what? Makhachev ragdolled the Kiwi, and honestly, I felt kind of bad for the guy. I mean, imagine how terrifying it must have been to be taken down and dragged to Islam's corner. And then to hear Khabib belting out commands at the top of his lungs. That submission finish against Hooker was insane. And we heard the man scream as Islam started cranking his arm. Yeah, you better believe that watching a guy like Hooker fall apart is definitely terrifying. So from his absolute destruction of top lightweights like Dan Hooker to his surprisingly deadly and complete striking ability, those were the reasons why fighters should be terrified of Islam Makhachev.